Namaskar. Welcome to another episode of Editorial. Today, let's talk about caste census. Let's talk about what is caste census. Let's talk about census per se. The question that I wanted to ask tonight is will caste census actually work? If it does, who does it actually benefit? Let's get right into the show. In India, they say we don't cast our votes, but we vote for our caste. It's a cliched saying. It's been said many times. Now, started with Bihar, RJD and JDU met, and JDU and their MPs requested the Home Minister that we should be having caste census. Of course, each and every party supported them. They were supported by SP, Samajwadi Party in Uttar Pradesh. They were supported by Bahujan Samaj Party in Uttar Pradesh. Congress said that it is a good idea. So the entire opposition supported them. And this is one proposition that I guess every political party would want to support. Now, before I get into this politics and all, let's understand what is this caste census. Census began in India way back in the 19th century. It is British, the colonial Raj, that they started census in India. Those days, they would have caste census because they wanted to divide India into castes, ensure that there is huge caste divide, ensure that there is no free flow of people from various castes with each other, because that would have united India. So for them, for the Britishers, it was very necessary to have caste census. So way back from 19th century, it started. Somewhere in 1937, somewhere in 1931, not 1937, 1931, the last caste census was published. After that, caste census was never published in India. But till 1941, British continued to collect that caste census, but never published it. Census happens every 10 years, we all know. Now, this is the story of caste census. Now, our political parties say that, Baba, listen, let us have this caste census once more, because if you have caste census, then you can actually help backward classes. That is what the political party claims. So that is why they say we should have caste census. We should know how much of who are there in this country. Till now, the way census was done is right from 1931 till now. Census would talk about scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. That the census would show the figures, not other backward class, but only scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. According to the census, 15% of the population of India is scheduled caste and 7 to 8% of the population of India is scheduled tribe. So this was it. Now let us talk about other backward class. Let us first get this definition and all out of our way, and then we will come into the analysis part of it. So in India, they say we have 2,633 different communities who are listed under other backward classes, and this list is created by the central government, the union government as on now. So 2,633 backward class. Now, you see, let's get into the genesis of other backward class. You see, in 1979, during Morarji Desai's government, now mind you, in 1979, we had two prime ministers, technically. One was Morarji Desai till July, and then was Charan Singh after July. Morarji Desai party was called the Janata Party. Charan Singh's party was called the Janata Party Secular. So, during the Morarji Desai regime, Morarji Desai had appointed a socially and educationally backward class commission, which was headed by B.P. Mandal. He had appointed this commission to study the socially and economically backward class and give him the numbers. So this was the Mandal Commission, the famous Mandal Commission. Now in 1990, when Mr. VP Singh was the Prime Minister, he implemented this Mandal Commission, and you know what happened. India was almost on fire. VP Singh implemented this Mandal Commission, and it was VP Singh in 1990 that came up with this term called OBC, Other Backward Class. So this is the genesis of other backward class. Now, that being said, the census, though a lot of political parties even then wanted the census to happen every 10 years of the other backward class, the census never listed other backward class or put figures to the other backward class in terms of numbers. So this was the story. Now, let's look at this entire thing from a political perspective. The Marathas in Maharashtra, the Patidhars in Gujarat, the Jats in Haryana, the Gujjars in Rajasthan, the Kapus in Andhra Pradesh, all these communities are looking for reservation. So it was not just about the Marathas in Maharashtra or the Gujjars in Rajasthan or the Patidars in Gujarat agitating. Their agitation was actually causing a lot of problems for their respective state government. They were actually destabilizing the respective state government. Therefore, it was creating a lot of political insecurities. Let's look at the May 5th court verdict for the Maratha reservation. The Supreme Court said on the 5th of May, the Supreme Court said, Baba, listen, the ceiling is 50%. You cannot go more than 50%. You cannot give reservation for more than 50%. Number one. Number two, to classify a particular community as OBC or social and economic backward class, all these are left to the center and not to the state. The state cannot classify a community as OBC or social and economically backward class. That the state has no power. So it is the center that has to classify that. And that is according to the Amendment 102. Now let us talk about the 102nd Amendment Act. According to 102nd Amendment Act, the power to decide as to who is OBC, to list the OBC, that power is with the center. The center can decide that this is OBC, the center can certify them as OBCs. They have the rights. The states do not have that right. But now, with the 127th Amendment, the center will give that rights even to the states. So the states now can decide who are OBCs and who are not. When Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar proposed reservation, at that point in time, it was a major social need and he proposed it because he wanted to bring about social upliftment. But is reservation used as a tool or a methodology for social upliftment? Now, how much of this reservation, how much of this caste politics has actually helped the economically, socially backward class? How much of it has it actually helped? It's a very simple logic. We've been talking reservations since our independence. In fact, before our independence. And reservations has been given. 70 years after our independence, we are still talking reservation and we are asking for more reservation. What does that mean? That means that all the reservation that we gave for last 70 years has actually not worked for the real socially and economically backward class. It has never worked. It has been always used as a political weapon. It has been used as political tools. But the fact remains that it has not helped the actual socially and economically backward class. It has never helped. Isn't that a simple logic? Because if reservation would have helped, today we would have talked about reducing reservation rather than increasing reservation, because we would have said, "ठीक है, हो गया, इतना then people have been uplifted, so many economically and socially backward people and families and communities have been uplifted, so now we reduce the reservation and we go further." But no, it has not. We are still talking about more reservation, which technically means that whatever has been given till now, that is 50%, has not worked. I am not against reservation. I am never against reservation. But what I am against is the way reservation is used to ensure that health, education, jobs, these priorities are kept behind, and just the caste card is used. Before I end my editorial, I've got a very interesting story for you. A short story, but a very interesting story for you. You see, in Madhya Pradesh, all parties are one in this. In Madhya Pradesh, all parties came to put together, and they are releasing a booklet, a 38 pages booklet. Okay, in this 38 pages booklet, they are going to list words that cannot be used in the parliament, which is non-parliamentary words. I found these words to be very funny. Okay, now mind you, this book has been launched by the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Mr. Shivraj Singh Chauhan. It is also was co-launched by Mr. Kamal Nath, the leader of the opposition from Congress, and also the Parliamentary Affairs Minister Narottam Mishra, and the speaker, of course, Girish Gautam. So all these people, all the opposition, everybody came together and launched this book. And the interesting part of this book is, there are around 1,600 words that have been considered unparliamentary and therefore banned to be used inside the house. I'll tell you some of these words, very interesting. You can't use the word Pappu inside the parliament because Pappu is insulting. So it is banned. You can't use the word Mr. Bantadar. Bantadar technically means spoil sport, I presume. So you can't use that word. That is against the law because Bantadar was, I think Digvijay Singh was called Bantadar. Okay, you can't use the word dhongi. You can't use the word dhongi. You can't use the word nikamma. You can't use the word chor. You can't use the word bhrasht. You can't use the word tanasha. You can't use the word gunde. You can't use phrases like jhoot bolna. You can't use phrases like vyabhichar karna. You can't use words like sasur. I don't know what that means. And you can't use words like ventilator. So all the parties put together and they said, listen, let's compromise karte. Ye sab words, ventilator and all, you can't use. So if you have to say that, there has been no ventilator available, you have to say, wo oxygen dene wali machine, wo available nahi hai, but you can't use the word ventilator. And if you want to say that somebody is Tanasha, so you have to find another word for it. So that's the idea. I find these politicians very funny at times. Anyway, till I see you next time. Namaskar.